we got some fun questions this week. How should a person who doesn't feel a strong vision for their future go about developing one? Just come to my gym. What exercises and drills would you recommend that they have a significant carryover to strength? You're going to have to hold 300 pounds and then walk a quarter mile. However, this was unsustainable, and upon quitting juicing, he gained the weight back. I'm also concerned about the industry. If you have a crappy car, you probably have good glutes. And as a human, you will eventually die. I thank you, Tim. Well, hello and welcome back, everybody, to the DanJohnUniversity.com podcast. I'm Dan John, and this is episode 252. My, how time flies. Remember, if you have a question, send the questions to podcast@danjohnuniversity.com. This is a question and answer podcast, so if you have questions, I answer them. If you don't have questions, then I just sit here staring at the camera for hours. So enjoy that. Hey, listen, we got some fun questions this week, and we start off with a question that I had to think about a little bit, and so here we go. This is a question from Tim, and Tim says, "You were recently discussing making funeral arrangements, and it reminded me that Dan John is a human, and yes, and not just a pretty face that pops up on YouTube each week. And as a human, you will eventually die." I thank you, Tim. I'd forgotten, but likely outlive me. Well, we'll see. My question then is, who will be the Dan John of the future once the current one is passed on? I'm assuming to a better place. Are there any other up-and-coming coaches who cover so many genres in life? Well, Tim, it's interesting. For years, I've had this kind of fun thing, but I take it seriously, and so do the people who get it. It's called the Dan John Black Belt. And I know it sounds weird, but the members are all pretty interesting. One of the things I kind of expect everybody to do who works with me, and especially those who are black belts, is to work with an underserved population. So Taylor, for example, Dr. Taylor Lewis, he does a great job with cystic fibrosis, and he's just an amazing guy. We've done workshops together. He's also a certified kettlebell instructor, and he came out of retirement to pitch in American baseball, and his team won the conference. So he's also an amazing athlete, amazing guy. Jeff Hemingway, of course, out there in New York City. Jeff's a wonderful guy. He's been working with me for, I want to say, a long time, 35 years, 37 years, whatever. And Jeff is just he's great. If you've ever been at one of my New Jersey or New York certs, you've met Jeff. Jeff's a hard-working guy. He puts people first, and it's a wonder to be with. Lacey Helfert, of course, was the first American, I understand, to graduate from St. Mary's in Twickenham, London, in their strength and conditioning program. Kettlebell certified, hard worker. I'm thinking I'm forgetting a few people, but the one I want to mention is the only person who was just brought in. He got Godfather claused on this one. It's Lonnie Wade, who just became Vermont's football coach of the year. He gets special credit because he was the last person to ever talk to my father. So it's just a fun thing we do. I can't tell you everything. I can tell you that once you achieve this honor, you're not allowed to use your strength for evil purposes. So, but we do have a little ceremony, which it's what you think it would be. So yes, it's lunacy. But I looked at what I'm hoping is, and I worry, two things. First, I hope we can reward more and more of these fine young people who do more than just strength and conditioning, do more than just fitness. People who find an underserved community that needs our help and steps up. I'm amazed at, I work with people strength coaches who work with Parkinson's and MS and, cystic fibrosis and a bunch of other diseases to see if we can add one more tool to help people continuing on. So, on the other hand, I'm also concerned about the industry because as fluffy as I thought it was, when I was young with all the, nonsense herbal remedies and nonsense magic exercises and machines, I think we're 100 times worse now. And you'll notice all these young fitness influencers on all the various social media sites. They will say things and get away with it because, they're hot, and I left my hotness behind probably the day I was born. But, they never, I make a joke in one of the forums because they put pictures up of yourself. And I think I'm the only person in the forum to have a shirt on. And so I put a little joke on my tagline, I apologize for wearing a shirt in my picture. But I don't know why. I mean, personally, if I hire a coach, I don't care how the coach looks or how how far the coach throws. I care how far the coach makes me throw or how good the coach makes me look. My weightlifting coach had never done the Olympic lifts, but had a perfect eye for it. And so I do have some concerns about what's coming up. So Tim, your question is good. And let's keep rewarding people who put quality over whatever the phrase would be, that sexy, I guess. But you know what I mean. Tim, great question. I kind of appreciate it. And thank you for the kind words. And I'm at a time in my life with a lot of the events that have happened in the past few years that I do have to be very smart about things like my will and my insurance and my legacy. So thank you very much. I appreciate it, Tim. Feel free to ask these kind of questions anytime. So thank you. We have a question from Martin. It's a little different. My father's in his early 50s, young man, stands 6'4" and weighs roughly 350 pounds. He's been medically cleared, and aside from his weight, he is in good health. Yeah, I always find that interesting, that we still struggle with the word health, longevity, fitness, performance, body composition, because they're all a little different. I mean, they obviously, twine up together. They all, whirl together. But I've always found that interesting. So even though your dad is heavy, he's in good health generally. My question is, where do we start? He works in construction, so he is relatively active due to his physically demanding job, but he hasn't engaged in voluntary exercise in a long time. A few years back, he lost 100 pounds doing juicing. God bless him for that. Replacing every meal with homemade juices from veggies and fruits, etc. However, as you can imagine, this was unsustainable, and upon quitting juicing, he gained the weight back. That's just such a common thing to hear and read. Your concept of the before and after photo comes in mind. I have suggested eating whole foods while intermittent fasting to put him in to him in the past, but I don't think he ever tried it. Well, I'm a big believer, and I have a book called Easy Strength for Fat Loss. I think that's what it's called. But it's I'm a big believer that, well, there's no secret, but, calories in, calorie out is true to a point. Now, obviously, I was just reading an article about ultra processed foods, and I was shocked to see that in England, almost 70% of the diet of the English is ultra processed foods. So the first thing we have to always talk about, Martin, and no matter what it is, of course, it's food, and you've already tied into that, and the quality of food. It's too bad in a way your dad didn't, instead of juicing, your dad would have just ate the vegetables and fruit. The nice thing about your dad is he knows the path, and the path for him, and I'm not sure juicing would be another thing to return to because of that bounce, that yo-yo that happened. But at some level, we need to look at food. I mean, and this is, I'm sure you're all leaping out of your chair saying, what? But yeah, and the first thing I would look at is the ultra processed foods. As best he can, he has got to eliminate, well, it's probably 50 to 60% of what most Americans eat. He's got to drop the soft drinks. He's got to drop, alcohol. Obviously you can find variations to get away with. snacks, anything that comes in a bag or a box that has calories. He needs to stop drinking calories as best he can, but he's got to eat cleaner. Now, obviously, I'm a big fan. There are certain cereals I think really have a value for my athletes. I'm going to give you brand names. I get nothing from these companies, but I think Fiber One and the Raisin Bran family have value to an athlete, because one of the things we're trying to do with athletes is increase their protein intake, increase their veggies and fiber, and sometimes it's nice to have a palatable food. So I guess Raisin Bran and Fiber One are pretty well processed, but and it's not very much of a bowl of Fiber One. When you measure it out, what they consider a serving size isn't very much, but it has 65%, as I understand it, of your daily fiber needs. Well, I think that number is still low, the number of grams for daily fiber. I'd like to see it much higher. But we need to get your dad on more protein, more fiber, more vegetables. And you know the drill. I think you already see it right here in what you told me. Will intermittent fasting work for your dad? Now, that's an experiment he's going to have to try. Would he be willing to roll out of bed and just drink coffee and skip whatever he eats for breakfast? Now, if it's ultra-processed food, I don't know, if he starts his day off with, ho-hos, ding-dongs, and Twinkies, yeah, that's probably going to help him no matter what. Even with processed foods, I always try to make them a little better. Like with my oatmeal, which isn't terribly processed. My oatmeal is a quality oatmeal, but I add seeds to it, and I add protein to it, and I add cinnamon to it. So sometimes you can go the opposite on processed foods by adding other healthy ingredients. It's like a nutritionist told me a long time ago, is that the American salad is just a it's just a holder for all the dressing we pour on it. And I thought it was interesting because, iceberg lettuce has very, very little nutritional value. But if you take iceberg lettuce and you load it up with 20 other vegetables, you've transformed an item into something a little bit better. So first off, I want you to look at the ultra-processed foods he eats. And you've got to just have a kind of a big kids conversation with, it's not, I don't know when your dad grew up, but I don't know, was he watching He-Man or whatever on TV or whatever? He's not sitting in front of the TV anymore watching He-Man with the bowl of, highly sugared cereal, eating toast with jelly on it. He's now a grown man at 6'4", 350. He's a very grown man. So ultra-processed foods first. No matter what we talk about, you got to do it. Number 2, stop drinking calories as best you can. I'm always interested when I travel. I'll stop at these various coffee places. So I can. This weekend, I drove about 8 hours a day to go to this graduation ceremony. I'll drink a lot of coffee on the road, and I always order hot black coffee, and there's always when I'm standing there, I just listen to the number of concoctions that you can throw into coffee. Coffee by itself. By the way, coffee by itself has more fiber. I think this is right. If I'm wrong, I apologize. But I was told a cup of coffee has more fiber than a banana. And I thought to myself, well, wow, that's something to remember. It's the soluble fiber, I guess. So can we get to eliminating ultra-processed foods? Can we get to walking away from drinking calories? So your tea family, your coffee family, water, all pretty good. From there, I think an experiment with intermittent fasting might help, but just try it out. It's not for everybody, and I know that. You say he works a pretty serious job, but if he has an active job and he already has done what he needs to do, just by maybe pushing the fast off. Now, a lot of people argue it's better to fast, like skip the evening meal, than it is to skip the breakfast. But most people I work with, it's so much easier with the way their life is to skip breakfast. But if you want to try intermittent fasting, I'm all in. Now, when it comes to easy strength for fat loss, which, obviously I've had people with great success doing it. It's interesting because I've had people have great success with really hard training programs and hard diet programs. But the problem always is that the yo-yo happens. But with easy strength for fat loss, you just don't see it. It's like the engineer's diet, if you can find it online still. It was a popular diet maybe 2 decades ago. But the idea is you stay between two numbers and you slowly, gradually, over a long time, bring your body weight or your waistline measurement down. I think there's advantages for both. Probably best to do both. From here, if your dad's interested, if he could, clean up the food, clean up the beverages, wake up in the morning, drink some coffee, get a little weight workout, get a little walk, and then just go on with his life. And I'm just wondering if that little extra nudge might be all it takes. Now, stepping back, I made a decision. This would be, wow, it's sneaking up. It's sneaking up on 20 years, but closer to 15 right now, is I decided to completely change the way I work with fat loss clients, probably in 2007 or 8. And if you go to my workshops, you'll hear, this story all the time. But the first month, you have to pay 12 months in advance. And if you don't follow my simple suggestions, I fire you and keep the money. I don't know if and by the way, it doesn't always help. The first month is you have to drink 2 glasses of water every day. And the idea, and this comes from BJ Fogg's Tiny Habits, is that if you can't drink 2 glasses of water a day for a month, your habits are so askew that we're not going to be able to do some of the tough stuff. So that's where I would begin with a client from that period of my career. Month 2 was we found the parking space the farthest away from their office or place to work. I don't know if that works in your dad's case. And I would tell the coworkers, if you see them park anywhere else, let me know, because I didn't tell them this, but then I fire you. Month 3, we start exercising. Now, what's interesting about this and why I bring this up is I had a client do this, and the first month, it was 2 glasses of water. And the joke is, and I've said it on the channel before, I'd call up and you hear in the evening, bring, 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 because they were drinking the second glass of water. But within a year, he lost 100 pounds and ran a half marathon. He picked up the half marathon goal 6 months into the program. And the funny thing is, the first 6 months is almost nothing except establishing good habits. Pulling yourself off of ultra-processed foods, soft drinks, comfort foods. There's a lot of emotional baggage that goes along with all that stuff. If you had a rough childhood and there's a certain fast food restaurant that maybe you went for celebrations only, well, when you're an adult, you might go there when you're feeling sad and lonely, as the song says to us. I would take your time. I would also do a couple of things I want you to do for me now, Martin. So, ultra-processed foods, eliminate caloric beverages, try fasting, try easy strength for fat loss. But here's 3 things I really need you to do. I would like him to see a dentist, and I'd like to see him an eye doctor, and then get a full medical exam. And I know you mentioned in the beginning that he's healthy, but let's make sure his teeth are healthy, because if we're asking him to eat a lot of vegetables, and he's got all kinds of crown issues or molar issues or broken fillings or cavities, he's not going to eat a lot of raw vegetables. So let's do that. The eye doctor also gives great insights. Insights? Eye doctor? No? Okay. Into the general health, and especially, there are some things they can pick up that really are, I'm not going to say life-saving as not dying, but life-saving as increasing the quality of life on Earth. And of course, the medical doctor at 350 pounds, 155 kilos, he's going to need some assistance from the medical field. There might be some pills he needs to go on. Maybe there's some tests he needs to take, but let's make sure we cover those bases too. Martin, good luck. I would really like to find out how this goes. Okay, thank you. I've got a question from Grant. What are the relative benefits of the 2 types of kettlebell squats that you mention most frequently? The goblet squat and the double kettlebell rack squat. I've been doing rack squats for years and they continue to surprise me with how much more challenging they are than a barbell front squat. Really? Okay, that's interesting. Okay, he's going to answer his own question here. I assume that this is because the kettlebell's center of mass is well forward of the body's center of mass. Exactly. In essence, you're bracing against a lever that's trying to pull you over. Yep. That's a nice way to say it too. I might steal that, Grant. I just did. For that reason, I often feel like rack squats work my abs and core more than my legs. So that's why we move to them with my throwers. Is the same idea. And that's why I like what's called the bear hug squat. You pick up a big bag. It can be a wrestling bag. It can be 100. You can put 100 pounds of sand in it. You bear hug, walk, and then squat. It just really makes people squat well. For that reason, I often feel like rack squats work my abs and core more than my legs. One limitation I've encountered is how much weight I can hold in the front rack position. For example, I struggle to do more than a few reps with my two 36K bells. Yeah, I'll tell you why, because they're heavy. You're welcome. It's not my legs that give out, it's the strain in my lats trying to maintain the kettlebells in the front rack. I would also say, just before we go on, I have to stop you here. If you're holding the bells out here versus resting them here, that might be the issue too. I like thumbs on pecs in that finished position. By the way, I also allow people to interlace their fingers when you have the bells like this. It's just easier for a lot of people. So instead of holding the bells like that, you just lightly hold the bells, your fingers like this on the bell. For those of you just listening, I just interlaced my fingers. But I'd like to see a picture of how you do it to make sure you're doing it right. By comparison, I haven't done much strength training with the goblet squat and don't have a good understanding of when they should be used. In short, what are the pros and cons of rack squats and goblet squats, and what do you think of the recommended use cases for each? Are there other kettlebell squat variations you think have value, such as the single kettlebell rack squat or the Zercher squat? I don't know how you would do Zerchers with a kettlebell. I mean, I like the Zercher squat, but I don't know how you would do. Let's talk about the single first. I think the single has great value, but there's a caveat there. I like your chin, your sternum, and your zipper, the C as Z line, to stay in a straight line. What I see a lot of times at certs or when I see people at gyms, as they go down in the single side, they begin to turn. Now, there are people online who argue that's really a good thing, but I'm never a fan of loaded twist bending or ballistic loaded twist bending. This is what we were taught when I was young in J.K. Doherty's Track and Field Omni book. There's a whole section in the power development part about not doing those exercises. And yes, I know there's exercises like the Russian deadlift that do them, or the Russian goalie exercise is another one. Well, if you're a Russian goalie, go ahead and do them. For the rest of us, I don't think you should. So, single side, the thing I make sure you do is do your best to stay chin, sternum, zipper in a straight line vertically. One of the things you might pick up on, and this is very interesting, I think I've always found it interesting, there might be people who, and we'll just give an example, on their right side, that CSZ it is totally vertical. You could build a building off of it. And the left side, they move all over the place. Now, to me, that's the value of the single side front squat. It really does expose asymmetries. Okay, asymmetries, just for the 100th time, they're not good or bad. They are what they are. If you want to be an elite athlete in a lot of sports, you have to have asymmetries. Javelin thrower, discus thrower, American baseball pitcher. Probably there's a bunch of other sports where you just got to spend a lot of time on one side. It's interesting because I talk with people in American baseball a lot, which I don't really know a ton about, but I often recommend that you should have your kids bat left-handed and throw right-handed so you get a lot of the side. Well, I had a friend of mine who works with baseball players. He says, well, that's interesting because, let's see if I get this right. throw right and bat left might be the easiest way to get into the Hall of Fame. And I thought, oh, okay. I guess it's a far superior way to play American baseball. Otherwise, if you do everything on the same side, you start to pick up asymmetries. You can see that when you watch American soccer football players. They're very asymmetrical in the field of play. And I never noticed it until someone from Ireland pointed it out. And now I can't unsee it. So with the goblet squat, the biggest value of the goblet squat, and most people think it's it's the goblet squat is the position of being on the bottom where your elbows are pushing your knees out. That's the goblet squat. It's that mobility moment. Now, obviously, there's great value in it. I do curls down in that bottom position to help my mobility a little bit more. There's all kinds of things you could do. So for me, the goblet squat is my, when in doubt, goblet squat, it's kind of like when people ask about nutrition, it's protein, veggies, water. People ask about recovery, it's sleep. When people ask, what should I do for my legs? Goblet squat. It's just like this, big answer I have. Goblet squat is great for teaching or relearning the bottom position. Most people did it when they were young. And it's also a very friendly exercise. People tend to, if you tell them, I want you to have your elbows push your knees out, it'll in real time, you'll watch people unhinge, bad term, get rid of old movement issues and slide down and, oh, you mean this? And sometimes it's perfect, sometimes it's not, but it's always a lot better when they were doing before they walked in the gym. The double kettlebell front squat is what I use for hypertrophy workouts. You'll find it all over my new book, The Armor Building Formula, available at danjohnuniversity.com/bookstore. Yeah, I'm a big believer for hypertrophy work that the double kettlebell front squat is best. Also, in the title of the book is the word armor building, and it was the double kettlebell front squat that I had a couple running backs tell me, this is what it feels like to be a veer running back. This is what it feels like. There's always, and this is where the concept of armor building came from, was from these young boys telling me, this is what it feels like to play the game. So if you're running the veer in your American football team, double kettlebell front squats is probably the best thing you do for your running back core. I'm sure we could probably spend another 4 or 5 hours on that, but those are the highlights. And I think from here, you'll know what to do. I wouldn't say there's a lot of kettlebell variations that I think have a lot of value. Oh, every so often someone will ping me the thing about this thing they saw or that thing they saw or this thing they can do. And good for you. The other variations, probably 100 people in the world care about them. And I'm probably a little high on that number. But for the rest of us, the bulk of us, the goblet squat and the double kettlebell front squat, those are the meat and potatoes of the kettlebell world. And with the single side front squat, kettlebell front squat, you have this greater chance to see asymmetry or not asymmetry. And that is a real value that I don't think people appreciate enough. By the way, if you find that you have asymmetries, let the problem side dictate the reps to the less problematic side. So if I can do 3 clean reps with my left side, the problem side, just do 3 clean reps with the right side. That's just my experience talking. Don't keep pushing those numbers up on the good side because you'll just keep that disparity. It'll stay, but at a higher level. Good question. Thank you so much. Ben here asked a question. It seems like having a vision where you want to go in life is very helpful. Yes. You talked about it with your vision of throwing a discus at a high level in college as a teenager. Actually, I wanted to play in the National Football League, but I understand your point. And Arnold Schwarzenegger talks about he envisioned becoming Mr. Universe before anyone knew who he was. My question is, how should a person who doesn't feel a strong vision for their future go about developing one? Okay, there's a couple things. First, there's a tool I have over at my at danjohnuniversity.com. It's the Goal Achievement Course. And if you're a member, I think it's free. And if it's not, well, I'll make sure it is. But it's I don't know, I think it's maybe 10 or more little lessons, and they're all pretty short. if you take that stuff seriously, the 5-2 assignment that's in there, pirate maps are in there. Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, it's shark habits are in there. There's a lot of fun things. But one of the issues that I want to make sure you're clear with is this, and I think this gets missed a lot. We're going to go to track meet. Since you mentioned the discus, we'll stay with that. So 20 of us show up at a track meet. Well, what is everyone's goal? Well, everyone's goal that day is to win the discus. Well, I mean, most people. Some people are there, they just want to improve their seasonal best. Some people want to improve their personal best or lifetime best throw. They all have the same goal. That's what a lot of people miss. When I first got back, and I was so sick, and life was kind of miserable for me. When I first got back from the Middle East, I bought the Tobias's course, Debt-Free Millionaire. And I got to tell you, it really, really helped me. And I think the reason it helped me so much is that there was 2 phrases in that sentence. Debt-free millionaire. Well, obviously, I mean, forgive me, but I'm an American. I wanted to be comfortable in my dotage here, and I am. I'm very proud of what I did. I was a school teacher. My first year teaching, I was paid for the year $9,000 for a year for 194 contract days or whatever it was at the time. I think it was 194. $9,000. But I still saved 10% of my money at that time, and I did all those other things you're supposed to do. I've never let debt encumber me. So yes, I work real hard to earn an income, but I'm also very, it's actually stronger in the words that are coming across my head. I mean, let's just say hyper-focused, psychotic might even be better, about not getting in debt while I move up. So by having a book like that, what it allowed me to do is realize that everybody I'm in a race against, everybody I'm in a contest, we all have the same basic goal. And it can be, there can be varieties, but if you're going to enter a bodybuilding contest, you want to win, I guess. I guess there's some people who just want to show up and enjoy the experience. But what gets you from I got to be careful here because I don't want to scratch out some of the stuff you're going to learn in the goal assessment class. But whatever gets me from here to there, we all have the same goal. It's the systems we use to get there. That's the real key. So I'm a big believer in systems. So on the back of my computer, I don't know, you can't really, it's upside down, but that's my daily pirate map, okay? And if I do those things every single day, my body weight stays down, my waistline stays where it should be. I feel healthy. I got 3 Olympic lifting meets coming up this year. I got, I swim in the ocean, I swim in lakes, I canoe and kayak, and I hang out with my grandkids, and I roll on the floor with my grandchildren who can't yet walk. I like that. Well, it was the systems that got me to where I'm at today. My daily pirate map is my system to keep my body composition and my basic performance where it needs to be. Okay, that's a lot of talking. So with Arnold, for example, when you read his book, now I have his, by the way, the first day it came out in 1975, I bought The Education of a Bodybuilder. The day it came out, I was the first person to buy it it might have been Barnes & Noble in Tanforan Park in South San Francisco. And I also have a couple of other Arnold books in my library over here. And one of the things you get a sense of when you read these books, his ability to sacrifice and do the extra stuff was very noteworthy. I remember reading about Greg LeMond, the Tour de France winner, and when he was first getting ready, I guess he had on his bike, he looked down and there was a dollar sign that he could look down at to remind him why he was putting himself through such agony. So the first thing you have to do is you have to not only have this goal, this Mr. Universe, or be a Division I discus thrower or whatever, but you also have to have those other small things going on. So not only did I throw the discus fairly well for the Utah State University, But I also had a really good GPA. I got a great education. I met a lot of great people. I had way too much fun sometimes. There was a big guy, and my professors would ask me every Monday about the track. I mean, it was wonderful. I loved all that extra stuff. But what got me there was the systems. And I knew in my own case, I would read an article, Dave Davis's article in Track Technique in '74. I want to say the May and April editions, that I had to learn the Olympic lifts. So even though I was throwing in high school and basically doing power bodybuilding, I knew that very soon I had to transition over to Olympic lifting. So what I think is the key, and in Arnold's case, remember he spent time with Reg Park, and Reg was candid about Arnold's shortcomings, which at the time were his calves and a few other issues. And of course, Vince Gironda famously told him, "You're fat." But when you get good advice and you take it, that's the next thing. And then you put together systems. Now, when I travel, I can spend 2 months in Europe with a single carry-on bag because I have a system for everything. We can go swimming in Galway Bay, and when we come out, I have my own gloves, my own beanie cap, my own waterproof jacket, my own this, my own that, because I pack them. I have everything I need to do, and I constantly try to simplify it and make everything smaller. Because when I travel, I have a system. Each week, I have a system. Every night, I have a system. My journal is upstairs, sadly, right now. But if it was with me, I could show you the system I use to sit down every day and put out my to-do list, both for my physical and my financial goals. Every day you come at it. So this is all over the map here in my answer. But what I'm trying to get across is, it's easy to set a goal. Just talk to any sixth grader. They'll have 100 goals they want in life. Talk to a sophomore in high school. I used to joke at the one school that every freshman in high school wants to go to either Harvard or Stanford. Every sophomore wants to go to Michigan or, Utah State. Every junior wants to go to the state college, and every senior wants to either go to the junior college or to a fast food store. I'm joking in a way, but it's true, because every freshman in school probably has the same set of goals. You want to graduate, you want to meet people, you want to have a nice time. Well, at least that's the tradition anyway. Maybe play sports, maybe get involved in some clubs. And yet, when you get to that senior year, there's only one valedictorian, there's only one school record holder, there's only one starting quarterback of the football team. And yet so many could have had those goals the first week. So it's not just about goal setting, it's goal achievement. And to get to goal achievement, you need to think about systems. In Arnold's case, I got to tell you, he summarizes it. He summarizes it in his book, and I'm going to pull this out because it's amazing. This is my little red book I've been keeping since 1973. And whenever I find a quote worthy of my time, I write it down. So this is from Arnold's The Education of a Bodybuilder. His 3-part secret: self-confidence, okay, and he had plenty; positive mental outlook, a little bit harder; and number 3, the one that gets most people, honest, hard work. If you get a chance, read his section on modesty in the book, because he doesn't believe in it. And I remember reading it. It wasn't popular in 1975, but his point, I actually agreed with it. I've never been a fan of false modesty. I appreciate, I certainly, I believe in humility and humbleness and all that stuff. But at the same time, when somebody asks how you throw the discus over 200 feet, you can't just say, I was lucky, or, how did you get your doctorate in, biochemistry? You can't say, oh, cheapers, I just lucked out. There's some hard work in there, and you got to appreciate it in your own life. I don't know if that helped or hurt, but that was a fun question. Thank you, Ben. We have a question from Wade, which is kind of something I haven't heard of in years, but here we go. How would you train someone to complete a United States All-Around Weightlifting Association Inman Mile? The USAWA describes the task as this. The lifter will take a bar onto the shoulders with a weight equal to 150% of the lifter's body weight. So folks, if you weigh 200 pounds, you're going to throw 300 on your back. So I would lean out. The lifter will then carry this weight a distance of 1 mile. Gait is optional. Yeah, I would just sprint. That's what I would do. Stopping to rest is allowed, but neither the lifter nor the weight may be supported in any manner. The bar must not be touched by any assistance once the mile has begun, or it will be a disqualification. The bar must stay on the back the entire mile. The lifter may be handed refreshments during the mile. Records will be kept for time. Folks, I heard about the Inman Mile when I first came online, and a guy bragged on one of the forums that he had done it, and of course, everyone said, no, you didn't. And he didn't film it. Now, I've never seen someone do it, and I couldn't even stomach. If there's someone did it, put it on a video, just tell me if they did. I'm not going to watch it. That can't. It's like watching paint dry to me. But the Inman Mile has been around a long time. I would say it's interesting because the Inman Mile actually came out before the term loaded carries came out, which is interesting to think about. So the Inman Mile, how would you train for it? Well, the first thing you probably need to do is walk a mile with nothing, and I mean nothing, and get a sense for how long it takes you. Because how long that takes you is how long you're going to have to support 150% of your body weight. So if it takes you, now obviously it's going to take a lot longer. We'll just use you weigh 200 and it's 300. Stepping back with 300 pounds when you weigh 200, I mean, when I was a 90 kilo lifter, a 198 pounder, I could squat 4, which is interesting because I never really squatted heavier than that for years. I just thought that was plenty. So that's double. But if you squat double body weight, 300 would be relatively light, until you stand there with that bell for, I'd say it's going to take you, I'm guessing it's going to take you, the best ever would have to be 8, 9, 10 minutes. I mean, so for the rest of us, us mere mortals who take 15 minutes to do it, that means you have to support that load for 15 minutes. You have to have 300 pounds right here for 15 minutes. That's hard. And so I would start first. I mean, wait, the fact that you're asking me online probably is not a great sign already. But the first thing I would do is you got to get your walking in, and then you got to get your supports in. I would work on supports as much as you can. Yes, it is loaded carries. There's a nice little deadlift variation called the Dimmel deadlift, I think, where you deadlift, and I think you take a step back and a step forward, and then you put the weight down. With the squats, pardon me, with the weight back there, you might have to start practicing gait patterns with 300 pounds. So you're going to have to hold, in our example, 300 pounds and then walk a quarter mile. If you run a quarter mile in a minute and a half, you'll break a 6-minute mile. If you run it under a minute, you become immortal at your school. You ran a 4-minute mile, a sub 4-minute mile. So it's going to take you, if you're walking, most people take about 3 to 4 minutes to walk a quarter mile. With the load on, it's going to be probably more like 5 minutes. So you're going to be in there for 20 minutes, just plan for 20. But you've got to plan for holding that load for 20 minutes first. Then I would say I would just start doing some standard stuff. I was going to joke and say, you should do intervals, do 8 200s, that would be, just getting yourself in a situation where you can do that is going to be tough. I know of a lot of these gyms that are industrial parks. A lot of people go on the perimeter and do things like do sprints and, run and, all kinds of, games and stuff like that. If you're at a gym where you can unrack a weight and walk around the perimeter of the facility, you might want to try that. I would try it with just the empty bar first. Get a sense of it. And those of you listening, if you really want a rough day, a 45-pound ruck, just a ruck, so 45 pounds in the bag, really does, in at least in my gym, gets people's heart rates to really jump up with just 45. Maybe in the next workout, you slap some weights on there and you try, 135, 60 kilos, and then you just inch your way up. But you're going to have two things that you're going to have to work on. First is getting yourself ready for supporting that load for that long. And then number two, I would just have you nudge your way up to it with, an empty bar challenge, a 40 kilo, 95 pound challenge, a 60 kilo, 135 pound challenge, and just nudge your way up. I know a lot of people probably aren't very interested in this topic, but I find this kind of thing just fascinating. So when you finish it, Wade, send me the video and I'll watch it in your case. Okay. Good luck to you. Thank you. Oh, well, okay. We have a question from Adam. And the only reason I'm answering this question is it'll be obvious in the first few sentences. I'm a fellow Utahn. All right. I have to answer your question then. And I'm looking forward to the start of the hiking season here on the Wasatch Front. I can hike long distances without getting too winded, but extreme descents like Utah's Mount Olympus hammer my knees and leave them sore. So here in town, we have the Deseret News Marathon, and it's considered one of the hardest marathons in the world. People come here because they think they're going to get a great time because the first 10 miles are downhill. And then if you haven't trained it though, I've had friends tell me that they're getting just their heads hurt. People are passing them so fast in that descent. But within a mile of when it goes flat, those people are starting to stagger off the race. It is that eccentric force of going downhill that's making you sore. So what can you do? What exercises would you recommend to create some shock absorption? I have a program. It's over at danjohnuniversity.com. It's in a couple of my books, but frankly, I can't remember which one they are. It's called the climbing program, the mountain climbing program. It involves there's seesaw presses, there's walks, there's all kinds of things. But you need, obviously the best thing you can do is, I guess the best thing you can do is get helicopter to the top of Mount Olympus and go down the hill, get helicopter back up, go down the hill, and just, try to super compensate your way into attacking this problem. Short of my great idea, I think you need to do goblet squats. I think you need to do rucking. Rucking is, hiking with a load on your back. I think you need to do a number of exercises. And I got to tell you, I even think kettlebell swings might help you. But you need to build up your ability and I'm going to say quads. I usually don't go straight to one muscle, but the ability of the quads to deal with the hit. One thing that I found with adolescent female athletes, this is 25, 30 years ago, walking backward up hills with loads. So farmer walk backward up a hill, backward ruck up a hill. It's funny, the other day on a trip, I found this hill and I walked backward up it, not in preparation for your question, but because we were discussing building up the knee area. And I woke up the next day and those horseshoe muscles around my knees were sore, which I thought was kind of funny. So you could do, walking backwards up a hill with load to help build those quads a little bit. I know it sounds counterintuitive to walk uphill to deal with the downhill issue, but I think it might help. And then get in the weight room as best you can. Get some squatting in, very upright squatting, kettlebell front squats, kettlebell goblet squat, barbell front squats, barbell overhead squats if you can do them. But I do think I do think you have to train your way up to it. And here's the thing. Next year when you come down Mount Olympus, your legs will be sore the next day again. It's a very specific kind of soreness. And for those of you who don't know, Mount Olympus is right there. It's a nasty hike because you could do it. I've heard people, it's a 3-hour hike. Well, yeah, okay, for you. But for the rest of us, it's probably 4 to 6 hours. And the problem with the hike is it's straight up and then it's straight down. When you get done with the hike, there's a flat area where you park and people will walk back and forth because it feels so good not to be doing those one-legged squats up the mountain and then those bang, 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 eccentric quad movements down the hill. Good question. And just remember, this kind of thing isn't going to stick. So, spend time in the non-hiking season keeping up that leg strength. Okay? Thank you. Good question. I've got a question from Muhammad. If you were to coach a body weight strength gymnastic athlete to make them stronger in doing their isometric body holds, what exercises and drills would you recommend that they have a significant carryover to the strength? Well, see, so Muhammad, when you're working with a gymnastics athlete, you have all the equipment you need right there in the facility. One of the things I've always been, and the guy's name, I think his name is Chris Somner. One of the things I liked about his gymnastics book was that there were like 18 build-up exercises to a movement. And he discusses in the book, like he'll sit around and there'll be a kid on the floor with his hands on the ground, his butt on the ground, lifting his heels off the ground. And the kid next to him, for example, might be, butt off the ground, elbows locked out, doing the same drill yet in that position. And then the next kid over will be doing that in the pike position. The next kid over. It's the answer to this question, Muhammad, is just like the answer of how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. And it's an old joke, but it's true. In the field, in the sport of gymnastics, it is time, it's repetition. You got to practice. You got to practice specifically. You got to practice things in parts and then blend those parts together, and then things work out pretty well for you. I know it's not a long answer, but it's just one of those things that's just kind of a true thing, okay? If you're a gymnast, you got to do gymnastics. Oscar has a question. I just bought and read Mass Made Simple. Lovely read. Well, thank you. Sometimes I get hammered on my books over there on that Amazon place. I can't wait to start bulking up after a marathon cycle turned me into a noodle. My question is on page 114. You write, stop adapting. Yeah, I actually cleaned it up. Originally, there was a bunch of swear words in this. Follow the directions and do it exactly as written. Roger that. However, would the program be ruined if front squats were substituted for back squats? A prior injury from football has made back squatting uncomfortable. Front squatting has always felt more natural. I know the obvious answer is, try it. After 6 weeks, then you can switch this for that. But I was hoping you could offer some insight. Well, my first insight is that I love that book. Mass Made Simple is a program that's true, it's real, I've seen young athletes completely transform, but it's really hard. That's why I wrote the Armor Building Formula. It's a much more realistic bodybuilding program. Literally, and it says there in the subtitle, Bodybuilding for Real People, which makes me laugh because there's a truth to that. When you talk to an elite bodybuilder, it's 24/7, and for a decade, there's no off anymore in that sport. The rest of us, have other things to do, or just don't want to do that much. I go through that in depth in that the new book here. Can you do front squats? I'll tell you one thing: you're going to have to figure out the loads. Front squatting 225 for 50. That's going to be tough. But if this is something you think you want to try, I look forward to your experience. And I do want you to get back on this to me, okay? So for the rest of you listening, yes, I am giving Oscar permission to change up a just do this program. But he has an injury. He's going to do something that's actually harder versus easier. when people say, well, why can't you do leg presses instead of the back squats? I can't. They never say it to me in real life, but you see it online all the time. But really, folks, yeah, I know that if you use certain supplements, that leg presses will help you build mass. But for the rest of us, it's just a strange exercise, And I know people disagree with me on that. But, yeah, seeing people just make all that noise in the gym and then they get up and it doesn't look like they'd ever work their legs. But if you're going to change for front squats instead of back squats, I'm walking with you on that. I would like you to stick with the reps as I encourage you to, and let me know how it goes. If you have to, maybe drop down the squat loads to next, like if you're 205 and above, drop down to the 185 numbers and see if that's feasible. Okay, good question. And good luck. Thank you. Scott asked a question that is it reminds me of the first article, one of the first articles I ever read on the internet. It was over at Clarence Bass's site, and it was a conversation he had with Terry Todd, and it's about spring. So Scott asked this question. As we get older, I realize a loss of athleticism is a legitimate concern. My question is this. Of all the exercise choices available for maintaining and improving athleticism, what would be your go-to? Just come to my gym. You'll find out. That's really that's what I think about. So as we age, there's a couple things going on. The loss of lean body mass is real. And all you got to do is get older and find out that's true. The second thing is the loss of mobility. And then the third thing is this thing that Terry Todd and Clarence Bass called it spring, but most of us call it fast twitch or athleticism, Scott, in your term, which I like a lot. In the weight room, so the exercises, I would say, if you want to keep spring, the hypertrophy bodybuilding exercises would be the ones that make you kind of what Art Devaney used to call this, the X symmetry. Broad shoulders, narrow waist, big strong pins underneath you. And for me, I think those are the vertical press family and then work the glutes. So it's like that female bodybuilder says, it's deltoids and glutes. And I think first, obviously there's triceps and ab wall and everything. I get that. But if you're doing exercises that work your glutes, build your glutes, Brett Contreras has a lot of insights on this. I like hip thrusts. I like kettlebell swings, I like deadlifts, like the squat family. Oh gosh, sled pushes and sled pulls, car pushes are great. If you have a crappy car, you'll probably have good glutes. For deltoids and all those other wonderful muscles, the whole overhead press family, and really, I'm just quoting you my new book. So, but when it comes to this thing you call athleticism, one of the things I'm starting to pick up with older clients I'm working, I volunteer at the senior center, is that they really need Tim Anderson's original strength. So, the neck nods and the find your shoes and the rocking and we call them fro zones, but the bird dog where you go contralateral with the hand going backwards instead of forwards, the cross crawling where you right hand hits left knee, the rolls. And you're probably saying, I wanted to talk about athleticism, right? But if your job has you sitting in a chair all day, your commute has you sitting in a chair all day, you eat dinner, then you sit down and you watch TV, you need to reawaken the original strength. So for me, the first thing I want to do is make sure you're pretty much tied together. This is the thing I found about that exercise called the fro zone. After doing that a couple days with Tim, I had to go sprint back to the hotel for a reason. Somebody forgot their passport. Here I am, 67 years old, and I'm sprinting with 2 titanium hips. And I'm like, what? When I get back, I'm like, because I hadn't sprinted, since the first hip surgery. So if you don't have your pattern, adding ballistic to it, adding speed and dynamic movements to it, I think might be an issue. Now, obviously, I always start at the bottom rung, okay? But I would say first and foremost, make sure you have your hypertrophy dialed in, you're doing your overhead presses and you're working your glutes. Second, make sure you're doing some kind of ground-based movements, some kind of thing that you work you're working your gait pattern, your stride pattern, however you do it. Okay, there's a lot of ways to do that. From there, then I would recommend, and I personally think, before I even go into the weight room, we call them the great 8, and the joke is I start slow and then I taper off. But the grade 8 that I do, I like backpedaling a lot. I played defensive back a long time, and backpedaling is very easy on my hips, but hell on my calves, which I didn't realize until the last workout. Sometimes I just do 8 back pedals like this morning. I do skipping, but when I skip, my right hand hits my left knee, my left hand hits my right knee. This is that cross crawling pattern that's so important. And maybe some of you can do sprints, maybe some of you can do strides, some of you can probably bound or whatever's appropriate. So what I would do, so let's go back, make sure your hypertrophies and you look good, okay? Number 2, you move good, okay? Original strength. Look good with the bodybuilding movements. Move good with the original strength. And then finally, look good, feel good, and now move good. Start off with some sprinting, and then when you feel good about that, my go-tos when it comes to athleticism, and every so often, obviously people disagree with me, and I'll tell you why they disagree with me, is they can't coach the Olympic lifts, but I still think the squat snatch, the power clean and press. I wrote a whole book on the power clean and press. Basically, the snatch, the clean and press. Those would be my first layer. If you have kettlebells, I think the kettlebell snatch, the kettlebell clean and press are all part of that family. I wouldn't go too deep into plyometrics if you're asking this question. I wouldn't go too deep into pushing the sprints if you're asking this question. Take some time to, lean out a little bit. Take some time to build your posture up with those vertical presses. Build those glutes up. Get those little skips and back pedals and all the other stuff. Get in the weight room. Do some quick movements. And then kind of just, what's the old thing we used to say, lather, rinse, repeat. Thank you, Scott. That's a good question. And it's something I take very seriously at my age. So thank you. Well, there you go. That's it for today. That was easy. Listen, if you have questions, this is a question and answer podcast. Send them to us at podcast@danjohnuniversity.com. I do my best to answer them each and every week. And until next time, let's all keep on lifting and learning.